That's Nick.
And that's Joseph. And today we're here to talk about Honey, Don't! The 18th film, technically directed by Ethan Coen, but only his second solo without his brother Joel alongside him, premiered in 2025 at the Cannes Film Festival in the Midnight section. Focus Features is releasing it theatrically August 22nd, 2025.
I know we reviewed this director's previous film.
You're familiar with the Coen brothers?
Fargo.
Yes.
Okay.
Big Lebowski.
Okay.
Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? Raising Arizona, I know you've seen.
Okay.
This film kind of plays like a weird B version of if you mix Raising Arizona and Blood Simple, their first film. But we reviewed Ethan Coen's previous solo directorial outing, Drive Away Dolls, which he co-wrote with his wife, Tricia Cooke, who has also co-written this one.
What is Honey Don't about? Honey O'Donoghue, a small-town private investigator, delves into a strange death tied to a mysterious church.
And that small town is Bakersfield.
What is your pull quote?
Arguably, Honey Don't plays like a familiar Coen brothers narrative with its comedic intentions hampered by the effects of a benzodiazepine, and yet Ethan Coen's continued vicarious meanderings through wife and co-writer Tricia Cooke's queer perspective establishes an odd, otherworldly energy as a lavender neo-noir.
Mine. Margaret Qualley shines at the center of Honey Don't, but the humor and story never quite rise to her level.
I would agree with that, especially with the supporting characters, which we'll get into, which suggests that maybe that was where Joel Coen really finessed some things.
I found this to be kind of droll and flat. I like dry humor, but that's not what this is. It's just kind of quirky and...
It has some scenes that I think pop, and then it really feels kind of meandering in a lot of other ways, which I assume is on purpose. But I feel like in 20 years, this is the kind of film where it's like, oh, remember this weird little odd gem that wasn't appreciated enough because of A, B, C, D?
I think what the story ultimately amounts to feels a little too complicated, which maybe is part of the joke, but didn't feel very satisfying to me. And the supporting characters just aren't memorable to me.
That's true. But, you know, when you think of like the classic neo-noir, when you think of Raymond Chandler's Big Sleep, which Hawks, like none of the people that made that film nor the director himself could really explain what happens in the film with the plot, with all the shit going on. So I don't mind that so much. But yes, it's like this zany, overcomplicated business going on that all comes to a conclusion that's like, okay.
So Margaret Qualley plays Honey O'Donoghue, a private investigator. It's modern day. She's in Bakersfield. She's a lesbian. Mm-hmm. One day, she's made aware of a woman who died, and it seems like a simple car accident. But she takes interest because that woman had made an appointment to visit with her, saying that she was concerned about something. So Honey starts looking into it, which leads to this church called the Four-Way Temple. The Four-Way Temple is led by Chris Evans.
Reverend Drew Devlin.
And we find out that that church is really a front for a sex cult that runs drugs.
I mean, that sounds great.
Then we find out that the dead woman was linked to the church. So, of course, we think, oh, maybe something with the church killed her. But in actuality, it's someone else. And this is a major spoiler. But within the movie, there's a cop played by Aubrey Plaza.
Her name is MG Falcone. And I didn't realize that MG were initials because I kept like, MG, what's that?
That was also throwing me off. But MG and Honey start having a sexual relationship. Like they have sex twice, I believe. But then Honey has a niece who has disappeared.
Corinne, played by Talia Ryder.
And so towards the end of the film, none of the pieces have come together. We don't really know what happened to the dead lady in the car. We're not quite sure what Chris Evans is doing. And now Honey's niece is missing. And MG, Aubrey Plaza's character, is kind of ghosting Honey. So Honey shows up at her house because she's thinking maybe she can get some help. Finding her niece. And when she gets there, MG is acting weird as hell. And basically we find out she not only kidnapped the niece, but is responsible for the death of the lady in the car and is linked to some other murders Why? Because
Trauma.
she has trauma from being a victim, and we also see in her high school yearbook that she was like a soldier for Christ. I'm not quite sure why I think MG did these murders. Committed the murders.
I mean, she has some garbled explanation towards the end about women being victims and maybe not deserving to live.
The end. All's well that ends well, I guess, because Honey's not dead.
Except Honey ends up hooking up with this French woman who's the first person we meet who goes to remove the ring of the church that's on the dead woman's finger in the car crash. And that woman is involved in there's a French connection. The French syndicate that's running the drugs through this church. And they end up, it suggested having a dalliance.
Another side character that complicates things is there's this old man who appears to be stalking the niece. Mm-hmm. And we find out that's actually
her grandpa.
Her grandpa, Margaret's Honey's dad, a strange dad. So then that gets thrown into the mix as being like, well, maybe he did something with her.
Well, because he sits all day staring at her job, which is at a place, and she's a heterosexual character, but she works at Wiener Heaven.
Yeah, I just think with everything that's going on and all these characters, which we didn't even mention them all, because you have a homicide detective played by Charlie Day, who is so one-note and repetitive. Mm-hmm. And I really like Charlie Day.
Same.
But he is basically, like, the joke is that he is attracted to Margaret Qualley and keeps asking her on a date, and she keeps rebuffing him in a friendly way because she wants her police connect.
But she always says, I like girls.
You know I like girls.
And he says, you always say that.
I just thought that was so... You have that character. Then you have Honey's assistant, who I thought looked exactly like Heidi in Closet. I felt like that character was really oddly written.
Her name is Spider in the film, played by Gabby Beans, who's a stage star. But maybe you just don't like characters named Spider because you hated that kid from Avatar.
Damn. I have arachnophobia. No, the way she looks, I was expecting her to be a little more jazzy and fun, but she's just walking into every scene like, hey, need some help? I can make you some coffee. Well, what did they say? Everything is just so flat.
Yeah, she just doesn't really get a moment to pop at all.
Honey is also flat, but I think Margaret Qualley in this role is kind of transfixing.
I agree.
So that lends a lot to it.
But if you think back of all those old noirs where you have a private eye who's usually a drunk, a womanizer, bitchy, like his narration is always cynical, hard-boiled, and she's not like that. She's confident, straight about the business. And I was thinking who else that might have reminded me of a neo-noir, and I kept coming back to Jack Nicholson in Chinatown, who also is having, a sexual attraction to the women in his orbit, but it's also very much about the business.
I'm just going to start going through my notes. The opening credits I thought were really cool because all of the actors' names were embedded in like signage as we're driving around Bakersfield. I always like that kind of effect.
Did you like because the lead cast gets a mural? Mm-hmm. I was cackling at the Aubrey Plaza mural.
Another side character I forgot about is this kid named Hector, mm-hmm. who runs drugs for the church. Oh my gosh. Another side character is Billy Eichner, this homosexual who goes to Honey wanting her to spy on his boyfriend who he believes is cheating on him. Mm-hmm. And sure enough, we see the boyfriend at a bar waiting to go on a date. Mm-hmm. And he has called for some drugs to be delivered because I guess they're going to party tonight. And so Hector shows up and tells Billy Eichner's boyfriend, hey, I can't give you the drugs because I was told you didn't pay for the last drugs we brought, so you owe us for 2. And he's trying to swindle him like, I have a tab, blah, blah, blah. And they go out into the parking lot. And the boyfriend offers this kid Hector oral sex as payment. And the kid freaks out. So in like some gay panic shit, hits him or pushes him. Uh-huh. And then accidentally runs him over, which I did think was kind of a funny scene because he runs him over and then the boyfriend gets caught in the car. So we see the body being dragged and then hit a light post.
Yeah, it's speckled with moments of pronounced violence, which are very Coen-esque. But if you think about where they are located in that scene in the parking lot, because the bartender is able to see
They're standing under a big light in an empty parking lot.
And the bartender's window is right there.
And the hotel is in front.
That man gets right down on his knees right there, like, I'm going to give you a blowjob.
That was ridiculous.
Like, okay.
But that kid, another side character is Chris Evans has this attractive Australian, like, goon who then goes to Hector's home because now Chris Evans is saying, well, we got to get rid of Hector because the police are going to, if they implicate him in this with the drugs, it's going to lead back to us. So you got to go kill him. So the Australian goes to Hector's house and he's there with his grandmother. And you mentioned something, after I'm done with this, you need to talk about like gender roles, but the Australian kills grandma.
Abuelita gets it, yeah.
Abuelita gets it, and then Hector and the Australian get into a fight in another moment of extreme violence that I thought was actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. But talk about gender roles.
Well, you know, they're playing with the tropes of the private eye narrative, of course, by having this unabashed lesbian, who's arguably also a lipstick lesbian, but, you know, looks fantastic. And that Hector, it's mentioned that his the motive for having killed the man was gay panic because of machismo. We see him again with the grandma who's like, don't iron your clothes, don't wash dishes, that's woman's work, don't you do that. He's like, oh, you work too much. And then in that scene also, Hector kills that henchman with items from the domestic sphere with a fork and an iron.
Right.
And I think all throughout this, the film is kind of playing with that, but I don't know how intensely or meaningfully it all ends up being.
Okay, I want to talk about Chris Evans, but first we get a couple of sex scenes that are kind of interesting. We get one with Margaret Qualley and this rando in the beginning to establish she's a lesbian. Then when she meets Aubrey Plaza in like the evidence locker, trying to get an address. And it wasn't clear to me if she had seen her before. But then she sees her again at a bar.
They meet at the bar.
Mm-hmm. And then they have an interesting moment.
Oh, that was kinky.
Where there's some, I'm trying to use non-demonetized language.
There's genitalia.
Aubrey Plaza is using her fingers to stimulate Margaret Qualley at the bar. So I thought that was interesting. They go back to her place. Mm-hmm. Then we get 2 sex scenes with Chris Evans. And I like Chris Evans, but I feel like maybe he wasn't the right person for this role, because you think, like, whenever you read about sex cults and or even religious cults, which I guess would be any church, but these leaders are a little more dynamic.
Well, the cult of personality, the transfixing, they draw you in, they make you feel special.
And I don't get that from Chris Evans. I mean, from the neck down, he's sexy, I guess, because he has a perfect body. So, I mean, maybe that draws these women in.
I mean, he's trying too hard. He's just bland. Again, he is very good looking, but there's nothing that screams like, oh, yeah.
I found him bland. I also felt like for such a queer movie, it would have been fun to cast someone who's a little more willing to go there, because we see him having sex twice, but it's always shot so you don't see him from the waist down. Then we do see him in a jockstrap at one point, but you never see his butt. It's just you can tell he's in a jockstrap. And then he puts on his church garb, which I thought the first thing I would have done was shown that character getting out of his church robe and all he's wearing is a jockstrap. But then they show him putting on pants with the jockstrap, which then made me think, is he legitimately wearing it as like an athletic supporter?
There's a scene where he removes himself from being inside a woman, kind of violently in one scene. It's like that we needed like a Steven Dorff shadow boxer moment where we're like, whoa.
Well, and then I thought if we would have cast someone a little more swarthy but like sexy,
I think Jude Law would have been perfect.
Yeah, someone like a Jude Law. Then I think, wouldn't it have made sense that maybe he's interacting sexually with all the parishioners, like male and female?
I love the shots where we see him giving a sermon at one point, and what is he comparing non-believers to? Macaroni? I mean, it's totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
I love the shots of all the members of the congregation who are eating up every word.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I didn't love him in this role.
Yeah, I didn't. Again, in casting too, I think Billy Eichner, strangely, he got one laugh from me.
Well, he's playing this pathetic, like, man who's clearly like, I mean, I actually like that scene because Honey, Margaret Qualley's character, tells him, like, I'm going to give you some free advice. In situations like this, where you think your person's cheating, you really only have 2 options. Like, you either can know that it's true and just leave them, or just be an adult and ask them in a non-confrontational way. Like,
and if it bothers you, say, how do we fix things from here if you want to?
So it's excellent advice. And then he just goes, no, I need to know. He's just being annoying, which is what I think of Billy Eichner. Right. So that worked.
The scene that made me laugh, though, is he comes back after we've learned that that's his partner that got dragged around the parking lot. And Margaret Qualley's trying to get him out of her office. And she goes, hopefully there's someone you can talk to, a friend or family member or clergyman. And the look he gave her...
He looks at her like, bitch.
That was pretty good.
I also like when he first goes in her office, he's wiping down the chair because he's like, COVID is still around.
That was giving me Eddington vibes as well.
Getting back to the church. So the name of the church is Four-Way Temple, which of course has sex vibes. And then the tagline for the church is discover the 4 ways to found, which I thought was so stupid that it actually was funny.
It's Found Town.
We see that French lady who works for like the cartel comes back to kill Chris Evans, which felt to me like, did we care? I don't know.
Not really. It struck me that when you were going through the synopsis after we watched it, it opens similar to another Margaret Qualley film, which is The Nice Guys, with a car crash that ends up being quite important. I thought it was interesting that... So Honey Don't is originally a Carl Perkins track from 1956, but it's been covered in many places, most notably by the Beatles. And I think that's the song that's playing over the end credits. But I think it's funny that the Animals, We Gotta Get Out of This Place, is the one playing over the Bakersfield exteriors.
I do like the production design. I like
the cinematography.
The cinematography.
Ari Wegner, because it's almost like too bright in ways that there were a couple moments where I'm trying to clock, like, is this even green screen? But I think it's just that detailed and bright. I really liked all of the scenes with Margaret Qualley driving around.
Well, I'm assuming it was to make it seem like everything's out in the open, not unlike the... Because, if no one's ever been to Bakersfield, it's kind of desolate and sad, no shade, but like...
There is no shade.
Because there's no shade. But, it is kind of sparse, and then we have that scene in the parking lot with the oral sex that's like, not only are you in the middle of a parking lot where everyone can see you, but you're under a light. The scene where Chris Evans gets shot, it's just like broad daylight. He's in his building, but like anyone can hear the gun go off. Margaret Qualley rolls up and there's no one in the parking lot. So I got the sense they were trying to say that like everything is just so exposed.
Yeah. Strangely, it also shot in New Mexico, I believe. Didn't you?
In Albuquerque?
Not in Albuquerque. And Don Swayze is in it as a bartender.
Oh, another side character? Yeah. And then I wanted to mention that the final showdown between Margaret Qualley and Aubrey Plaza is pretty violent. And she uses a hot teapot to burn her.
Well, it was almost giving me Chinatown vibes, and then it becomes like, that's like a Silence of the Lambs moment with Margaret Qualley in the corner with the gun. Because we also established that she doesn't like using guns, which I thought one of my favorite scenes, though, is when she doesn't... The grandpa scares the niece away after her shift to work. So Margaret Qualley, Honey O'Donoghue, is looking for the niece, and she thinks that it's an abusive ex-boyfriend. So she goes to his trailer and kicks the shit out of him.
That was a good scene.
But in a way that's choreographed very smoothly. Like, all of it just visually makes sense. Like, it's very calculated. I believed it.
As we're recording this film is rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. I don't think that's fair, because it feels like a lot of thought was put into it. I just think that this style of humor is not my flavor, and that's why I didn't love it.
Yeah, I think it immediately after it premiered at Cannes, kind of got negative press. But I felt like I was giving praise to Drive Away Dolls too, because I loved how lesbian it is. I don't know. I just find that so refreshing. And I probably prefer this over Drive Away Dolls, because to me, that not all the slapstick zaniness of that worked all the time. And by comparison, this film does feel medicated in ways that I don't understand why. But I don't know. I find it fascinating. I feel like if and when I revisit this film years later, I do think I'm gonna have that feeling of this was kind of underrated when it came out.
What would you give Honey Don't?
I'm gonna give it a 3.
I think it's okay. I would give it 2.5 out of 5. Join us on Patreon and listen to our podcast. Bye.